What if everything you were taught about trying was backwards? You try to be happy, and somehow happiness evades you. You try to relax, but the more you try, the tenser you become. You try to be confident, and suddenly, your hands tremble and your voice shakes. The harder you reach, the further it slips. The more you want, the less you have. The more you chase, the faster it runs. This isn't just an odd coincidence. It's a law, a quiet law, unspoken, unwritten. But it governs more of your life than you realize. The backwards law. First introduced by the philosopher Alan Watts, the backwards law, or what he called the law of reversed effort, suggests something radical, yet deeply intuitive. The more you pursue a desired state, the more you reinforce that you do not have it. And the moment you stop trying so hard, something shifts. The weight drops. The tension melts. And what you were reaching for softly arrives. It's a paradox, one of life's many. But unlike most ideas, this one has the power to transform your entire relationship with effort, success, happiness, even love. Because maybe the problem isn't that you're not trying hard enough. Maybe the problem is that you're trying too hard. The paradox of effort lives quietly in every moment of your life. It hides beneath the surface of your striving, in your goals, in your longings, in your anxieties. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. This video is not about doing more. It's about doing less, more wisely. It's not about giving up. It's about giving in to a deeper current that was always moving beneath your struggle. So let's journey inward, into the paradox, into the silence beneath the noise, where the truth of the backwards law begins to whisper. To understand the backwards law is to understand the strange language of life, the language of paradox. At its heart, the backwards law says this: the more you pursue feeling better all the time, the less satisfied you become, as pursuing something only reinforces the fact that you lack it in the first place. Let that echo for a moment. The more you chase happiness, the more you confirm to yourself that you are unhappy. The more you try to be confident, the more you remind yourself that you are insecure. The more you struggle to be peaceful, the more you create inner conflict. This is the law of reversed effort. It sounds absurd at first, until you realize that you've already lived it. Many times, in countless ways. Have you ever laid in bed desperately trying to fall asleep? You think, I need to sleep. I should be sleeping. But the very effort of trying makes you more alert. The anxiety grows, your body tenses, and sleep dances further and further away. Or maybe you've been in a social situation, trying hard to appear confident. You monitor your posture, your voice, your eye contact. And suddenly, you feel like a performer on stage, self-conscious and disconnected from the present moment. It happens in love, too. The more you cling, the more you lose. The more you try to make someone stay, the more they drift away. Why? Because trying too hard is rooted in fear. It's a grasping, a reaching, a silent confession that you are not enough as you are. That life, as it is, cannot be trusted. And so you push, you chase, you grind. But the backwards law tells us, pushing doesn't bring us closer. It pushes things away. Because desire, when it turns to desperation, becomes a repellent force. And effort, when it is born from fear, becomes resistance. Alan Watts, the philosopher who popularized this idea, said it beautifully. When you try to stay on the surface of the water, you sink. But when you try to sink, you float. The wisdom isn't new. It's ancient. It echoes in Zen koans, Taoist proverbs, and mystical poetry. Taoism speaks of Wu Wei, effortless action. the art of flowing with the river instead of fighting its current. Zen Buddhism teaches us to sit with emptiness, to let go of becoming, and simply be. Even Stoic philosophy urges us to release our attachment to outcomes, to act with virtue, but not be bound by results. Across all traditions, the message is the same. Let go. Trust the process. Step back from the chase. But this isn't about apathy. It's not passivity or laziness. The backwards law doesn't say, do nothing. It says, let go of your attachment to results. Act with presence, not pressure. Move with life, not against it. When you align with this truth, something radical happens. You stop striving, and you start allowing. You stop forcing, and you begin flowing. And what was once out of reach quietly begins to arrive. Not because you chased it, but because you stopped chasing it away. At the core of your constant striving, beneath the exhaustion of trying so hard, there lies a hidden voice. It's the voice of the ego, subtle, clever, convincing. It says, if I can just control everything, I will finally feel safe. But this is the great illusion. The illusion of control. You see, the ego doesn't want peace. It wants power. It wants certainty in an uncertain world. It wants predictability in the chaos of life. And most of all, it wants to feel in charge. So it begins its endless pursuit. Control your thoughts, control your body, control your future, control others, fix everything, perfect everything. Never let anything slip. But life isn't built that way. Life is not a machine. It's not a project. It's a mystery, a river, a wild dance. And the moment you try to command it, it rebels. This is why the more you try to control your emotions, the more they overwhelm you. You try to suppress anger, it festers. You try to avoid sadness, it deepens. You try to force happiness, it fades. Because emotions are not problems to be solved. They are waves to be felt. The ego wants to filter reality through a lens of manipulation. It wants to bend life to its will. But ironically, the more you try to dominate life, the more life pushes back. The backwards law reveals this clearly. Control is resistance. And resistance breeds suffering. The ego sees vulnerability as weakness. But vulnerability is actually the key to peace. Because when you allow yourself to not be in control, when you let yourself feel, fall, and not know, something remarkable begins to happen. You begin to relax. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer gripping everything so tightly. Think of a clenched fist. It holds, it grasps, it trembles. Now think of an open hand, soft, receptive, at ease. Which one can truly hold the world? Trying too hard comes from that clenched place. It comes from fear. Fear of failure, fear of inadequacy, fear of being seen as you are. But ironically, that very fear becomes the prison. The more you cling to control, the more anxious you become. The more pressure you place on yourself, the more you fracture. So much of our modern suffering isn't about what's happening. It's about how we're trying to control what's happening. We fight our anxiety with more anxiety. We fight our sadness with judgment. We fight our uncertainty with obsession. And we call it effort. But what if effort isn't always the answer? What if letting go is more powerful than holding on? This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop gripping life with the fear that it will escape you. Because the truth is, life was never in your hands. It was always moving, rising, falling, shifting, like clouds across the sky. And you were never meant to cage it. You were meant to ride it. Control is the ego's illusion. But trust is the soul's wisdom. The moment you loosen your grip just a little, you make space for grace to enter. You allow something deeper than control to guide you. Call it intuition. Call it presence. Call it God. Whatever name you give it, it begins to appear in the silence where control once lived. And you realize, maybe for the first time, you don't need to control everything to be okay. You just need to be present with what is. This is the essence of the backwards law. To stop trying so hard. Because it is your very effort that's building the wall. You've been told your whole life, work harder, push more, never stop. No pain, no gain. Keep grinding, keep climbing, keep becoming. And somewhere along the way, effort became your identity. Your worth became tangled in your output. Your value measured in how much you could do, fix, or force. This is the mythology of modern life, the cult of trying harder. In school, you're praised for pushing beyond your limits. In your career, you're rewarded for burnout disguised as ambition. In relationships, you're told that if you just try harder, love will stay. Everywhere, effort is worshipped. Productivity becomes salvation. Rest becomes laziness. And slowing down feels like failure. But beneath the surface of all this striving lurks a quiet ache, a whisper that says, no matter how much I do, it's never enough. Because the cult of trying harder is built on a lie. That effort equals worth. That more doing means more being. That if you just try hard enough, you can fix your fear, your loneliness, your emptiness. But you can't hustle your way to wholeness. And this is where the backwards law becomes so radical. It says, trying harder isn't always the answer. Sometimes it's the problem. Because the more you chase happiness like a goal, the more it escapes you. The more you treat peace like a product, the more restless you become. The more you chase love like a reward, the more it slips through your fingers. You begin to see that effort without presence becomes a form of violence, a war you wage against yourself. This doesn't mean that effort is bad. Effort has its place. But effort that comes from fear, from lack, from shame, is a fire that consumes you instead of warming you. Modern self-help culture, for all its good intentions, often deepens the wound. You are told to become the best version of yourself, as if who you are now is not already enough. You are told to optimize every moment, as if rest, stillness, and imperfection are sins. You are told to manifest your dreams, which often means forcing reality to obey your mind. But here's the truth that the backwards law whispers. Life cannot be bullied into beauty. It must be allowed to unfold. You can't schedule joy. You can't force insight. You can't command grace. They come when you stop demanding them. They arrive in the quiet spaces where effort once stood. And yet, in a world addicted to speed, silence feels unbearable. In a world obsessed with winning, surrender feels like loss. But what if that surrender, that stillness, is actually the doorway? The backwards law asks you to step out of the noise, to question the cult of hustle, to consider that maybe, just maybe, you don't need to try so hard to be okay. Maybe what you're chasing is already here, waiting for you to stop chasing. You've been taught that surrender is weakness, that letting go means losing, that if you don't hold on tightly to your goals, your image, your control, everything will fall apart. But what if that's the greatest lie you've ever believed? What if letting go is not collapse, but clarity? Not defeat, but alignment? Not powerlessness, but power in its purest form? This is the path the backwards law points you toward. Not more effort, but deeper trust. Not striving, but surrender. Not pushing, but flowing. In Taoist philosophy, there's a concept called Wu Wei, often translated as effortless action or non-doing. But it doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you stop forcing. You act in harmony with the natural rhythm of life, not against it. You become like water, fluid, soft, yielding, yet powerful enough to shape mountains. Lao Tzu said, "By letting it go, it all gets done." Not because you abandoned your path, but because you stopped resisting the path beneath your feet. To surrender doesn't mean to quit. It means to release your resistance to what is, to stop living from fear, to stop fighting life's natural unfolding. When you try to force change, in yourself, in others, in the world, you create friction. But when you accept what is, something miraculous happens. You begin to move with life, not against it. Letting go is not giving up. It is giving in. To the river that was always flowing, even when you were paddling upstream. To the silence underneath your noise. To the intelligence of something deeper than your mind. Think about the moments when you felt most alive, most connected, most free. Were you trying? Were you calculating and controlling? Or were you simply being present, open, unattached? That's the paradox of effort. When you stop trying so hard to make something happen, you allow space for it to happen on its own. Psychologist Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." And so many of our problems, our anxiety, our confusion, our despair, they persist because we resist them. We label them as wrong. We try to fix them, hide them, outrun them. But what if we just let them be? What if instead of changing the emotion, you accepted it? What if instead of fixing yourself, you befriended yourself? That is surrender. And surrender, paradoxically, is the only way through. Letting go is scary. The ego doesn't like it. It fears the unknown. It asks, if I don't try, what will happen to me? But the soul answers gently, if you keep trying, you'll never truly live. Surrender is not a strategy. It's a shift in being. It's the moment you stop needing to be somewhere else, someone else, something else, and you drop into what is. From this place, action becomes intuitive, not rushed, not desperate, not born from lack, but arising naturally, like a breath, like a wave, like sunlight breaking through clouds. This is the hidden power of the backwards law. When you let go of needing things to change, they begin to, not because you forced it, but because your resistance, your trying too hard, was the very thing holding it in place. Sometimes we don't need to heal ourselves. We need to stop interrupting the healing that is already trying to happen. Sometimes we don't need to figure it all out. We need to sit in the mystery long enough to hear what it has to say. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Not out of apathy, but from sacred stillness. Not out of laziness, but from deep trust. Surrender isn't the end of effort. It's the transformation of effort into alignment, where you are no longer pushing life around, but walking beside it, not demanding, not forcing, just breathing. And in that breath, you discover the most shocking truth of all. Everything you were chasing is already within you. Love, peace, happiness. These are the things we long for the most, and yet, They seem to slip away the more desperately we reach for them. You try to be happy, and happiness fades into the distance. You try to find peace, and your mind only grows louder. You try to make someone love you, and they slowly begin to pull away. It hurts. It confuses you, because no one told you that trying too hard is the very thing that pushes these things away. This is the painful, beautiful paradox at the heart of the backwards law. When you chase happiness, you make happiness a goal. You put it on the other side of effort. You turn it into a reward for your striving. But happiness doesn't live in the future. It isn't something to be earned. It's something that emerges, quietly, effortlessly, when you stop needing life to be different than it is. The more you say, "I must be happy," the more you reinforce the belief, "I am not happy now." And that belief becomes a prison. Happiness cannot bloom in a clenched heart. Peace cannot grow in a clenched mind, and love cannot breathe in a space that demands it. The same is true for peace. Trying to be at peace often creates more inner noise. You meditate to get somewhere. You breathe to achieve something. But that very craving for stillness is what keeps you agitated. Because peace is not a destination. It's the absence of resistance. It's the space that's left when you stop fighting what is. And love. Love is perhaps the clearest example of the backwards law in action. The more you try to make someone love you, the more you abandon yourself. You shapeshift. You perform. You overgive. You believe that love must be earned, achieved, won. But love doesn't respond to desperation. It responds to presence. It arises in authenticity, not performance. When you need someone to love you in order to feel whole, you place your wholeness in their hands. And the energy of need, of clinging, becomes heavy. It suffocates the space where love might have bloomed. But when you let go, when you relax into your own being, when you stop demanding and start allowing, love returns. Not always in the form you expect, but in a way that's real and deep and free. That's what the backwards law reveals again and again. The things you most deeply desire are not achieved by grasping, but received through surrender. Happiness is not a trophy. Peace is not a product. Love is not a prize. They are all byproducts of presence, gifts that arrive when you stop chasing them away. And so the invitation is simple, but profound. Stop trying so hard to be loved. Be love. Stop trying so hard to be happy. Be here. Stop trying so hard to be at peace. Be still. And in the gentle quiet that follows, everything you were chasing begins to softly arrive. So what now? You've seen the paradox. You've felt its quiet truth in your own life. You know that trying too hard often pushes the very thing you want away. But how do you live with this truth? How do you walk with the backwards law, not just as a concept, but as a way of being? It begins with a shift so subtle, it almost feels like nothing at all. You stop doing in order to get, and you start doing for the sake of the doing. You stop meditating to become peaceful, and instead, you sit, simply to sit. You stop talking to be liked, and instead, you speak from the heart. You stop working to prove your worth, and instead, you work from the joy of creating. This is aligning with the paradox. It is the art of moving without chasing, doing without forcing, loving without needing. You don't abandon effort, you refine it. You act, but with lightness, with detachment. You show up, but without gripping outcomes in your fists. In Zen, there is a saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. What changes is not the action, but the awareness behind it. You live your life. You take steps. You make choices. But now the striving is gone. The pressure dissolves. You no longer need the world to validate your existence. You are no longer chasing peace. You are at peace in the chasing. And ironically, beautifully, this is when life begins to flow. This is when the things you once strained to reach begin to move toward you. Because now, you are aligned with the flow of things, not resisting, not controlling, just being, just breathing, just enough. There once was a man who spent his whole life climbing. He climbed the mountain of success, clawing upward with raw hands and burning lungs. He climbed the mountain of love, always chasing, never arriving. He climbed the mountain of peace, meditating with furrowed brows and clenched fists. Every step, he told himself, just a little further. Then I'll rest. Then I'll be whole. But no matter how high he climbed, the summit always moved. The higher he reached, the more distant it seemed. And one day, with a heart full of ache and a soul worn thin, he stopped. Not in defeat, but in surrender. He sat beside a stream near the base of the mountain he had spent his whole life conquering. And for the first time, he didn't try to understand the current. He didn't try to cross it or redirect it. He simply listened. And in that stillness, the river whispered, "You were never meant to climb your way to the sky. You were meant to sink into the earth, to fall inward, not upward, to return, not escape." The man wept, not because he failed, but because he finally saw he'd been chasing a mirage. The love he wanted was in the breath he never paused to feel. The peace he sought was in the silence he'd always filled with noise. The joy he craved was in the very stillness he had feared. So he let go of needing, of becoming, of climbing. And as he lay beside the stream, eyes closed, heart open, he felt the summit he had always pursued, rising gently within him. And in that sacred letting go, he became the mountain itself. Close your eyes, not just to the world, but to the noise within you. Breathe. Not to control the breath, but to notice it, to feel the way life moves through you, without effort. This is what the backwards law teaches, in its gentle, paradoxical way, that what you long for is not somewhere else, that your constant trying is not the path, it is the barrier, and that the truth is not waiting at the end of your striving, but in the stillness you keep skipping over. You were never broken. You were never behind. You were never lacking. The more you try to fix yourself, the more you forget that you were never a problem. Let this moment be your reminder. You do not need to strive to be whole. You do not need to force your way into peace. You do not need to earn what you already are. Just be here. Let the world turn without your hands on the wheel. Let your breath rise and fall like waves. Let go of fixing, of chasing, of proving, and notice what remains. Not the tension, not the fear, not the story of not enough, but the still, quiet presence that was always here, waiting beneath the noise, waiting beneath the effort, waiting for you to stop running and simply return. This is the heart of the backwards law, that the more you let go, the more you come home. And in that homecoming, you don't need to try. You don't need to search. You simply remember what's always been true. You are already enough, just as you are, just as this moment is, just as life is, now.